The night Petra Igwe placed a single white rose on a stranger's grave, she never imagined that act of kindness would change her entire life. She was 17, broke, and grieving her grandmother. But when she saw a young Korean man collapse at the cemetery gates, bleeding and barely conscious, she didn't think, she just acted. She wrapped her grandmother's burial shawl around his wounds, called for help, and stayed with him until the ambulance arrived. He whispered something in Korean before losing consciousness. Something that sounded like a promise. 8 years later, Petra would slam her beat-up Honda into a $9 million Bugatti and come face-to-face with the most dangerous man in Atlanta's underground empire. And he would look at her like he'd been searching for her his entire life. The problem? She had no memory of ever saving anyone. But Kang Do-han remembered everything. Before we dive into this intense story of fate, forbidden love, and a debt that changes everything, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss what happens when Petra realizes the man she owes millions to has been protecting her from the shadows for almost a decade. Trust me, this story has everything: drama, romance, secrets, and a love so powerful it defies every rule. Now, let's get into it. The Atlanta summer heat was merciless. Petra Igwe wiped the sweat from her forehead as she maneuvered her ancient Honda Civic through the maze of luxury vehicles in the Buckhead district. The car's air conditioning had died 3 summers ago, and replacing it would have cost more than the vehicle was worth. Come on, she muttered, squinting at the GPS on her cracked phone screen. Left turn in 200 feet. Your destination will be on the right. She was already 15 minutes late for her job interview at the prestigious Kang Holdings headquarters, a company that had seemingly appeared out of nowhere 5 years ago and now dominated Atlanta's real estate and hospitality market. Everyone whispered about the mysterious CEO who never made public appearances, who conducted business through a network of intimidating lieutenants and ironclad contracts. But Petra didn't care about rumors. She cared about the entry-level administrative position that paid $45,000 a year, enough to finally dig herself out of the mountain of debt that had accumulated since her father's death 2 years ago. She made the left turn, her eyes starting between the road and the towering glass building ahead. What she didn't see was the sleek black Bugatti La Voiture Noire pulling out of an underground parking garage. The sound of crunching metal and shattering glass exploded through the humid air. Petra's body slammed against her seatbelt, the impact knocking her phone from her grip and sending it flying into the passenger seat. For a moment, everything was silent, that eerie, cotton-stuffed quiet that follows disaster. Then reality crashed back in. No, Petra whispered, her hands shaking as she fumbled with her seatbelt. She could see the damage even before she stepped out. The entire front of her Honda had crumpled like paper, the hood folded in a grotesque V-shape against what appeared to be the most expensive car she had ever seen in her life. The Bugatti's driver's side door was dented, though not as severely as her Honda. The custom paint job, however, a finish so deep and black it seemed to absorb light, was scratched and scraped, revealing silver metal beneath. Oh my God, Petra breathed, stepping out on trembling legs. Oh my God. The Bugatti's door opened. Time seemed to slow. The man who emerged was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that strained against his perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His black hair was swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, high cheekbones, a sharp jaw, and lips pressed into a hard line. But it was his eyes that made Petra's breath catch in her throat. Dark. Cold. Assessing her with an intensity that made her feel like prey. He was beautiful in the way a predator was beautiful, dangerous, magnetic, and utterly unforgiving. Behind him, 3 men in black suits emerged from a second vehicle that had been following the Bugatti. They moved with military precision, hands hovering near their waists in a gesture Petra had seen too many times growing up in her neighborhood. These weren't businessmen, she realized with a sinking feeling. These were soldiers. I'm so sorry, Petra said, her voice stronger than she felt. She had learned early never to show weakness. It was a lesson the streets of Atlanta had beaten into her. I didn't see you pulling out. My insurance, she faltered, remembering the lapsed policy notice sitting on her kitchen counter. I'll figure out a way to pay for the damages. I just need some time. "This car," the man said, his voice low and smooth, carrying an accent that wrapped around each syllable like silk, "is one of a kind. A custom-built Bugatti La Voiture Noire. It took 3 years to manufacture and cost $9 million. Petra felt the blood drain from her face. $9 million. She made $2,400 a month working double shifts at the restaurant downtown. After rent, utilities, and the payments on her father's medical bills, she was lucky to have $200 left over. $9 million might as well have been $9 billion. She started, then stopped. What could she possibly say? One of the suited men stepped forward, his hand reaching toward her arm. "You're coming with us. Don't touch her." The command cut through the air like a blade. The man immediately stepped back, his expression flickering with surprise before settling into careful blankness. The Bugatti's owner moved closer to Petra, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and woodsy with hints of sandalwood. This close, she could see the small details, the platinum cufflinks, the faint scar running along his left eyebrow, the way his eyes seemed to be searching her face for something. "What's your name?" he asked. "Petra. Petra Agui." Something flickered in those dark eyes. Recognition? Surprise? It was gone before Petra could identify it, replaced by that cold, assessing gaze. "Petra Agui," he repeated slowly, as if tasting each syllable. "I am Kong Do-han. You have just destroyed something irreplaceable." He paused, tilting his head slightly. "How do you intend to repay this debt?" Petra squared her shoulders, refusing to cower even as every instinct screamed at her to run. "I don't have that kind of money. I'll probably never have that kind of money. But I can work. I can pay you back over time." "Over time," Kong Do-han interrupted, a ghost of something that might have been amusement crossing his features. "At your current financial trajectory, Ms. Agui, it would take approximately 375 years to repay this debt. I don't intend to wait that long." "Then what do you want from me?" The question hung in the heavy summer air. Around them, a small crowd had begun to gather, phones raised to capture the scene. The suited men moved to block the onlookers, creating a barrier of expensive fabric and barely concealed menace. Kong Do-han studied her for a long moment, long enough that Petra felt the weight of his gaze like a physical touch. "I need a new domestic assistant," he said finally. "My household requires someone capable of managing various responsibilities. You will work for me until your debt is cleared." "Work for you?" Petra repeated, incredulous. "For how long?" "However long it takes." That's basically indentured servitude. Call it what you wish." Kong Do-han reached into his suit jacket and withdrew a sleek business card, extending it toward her with long, elegant fingers. "You have until tomorrow morning to report to this address. Your employment will include room, board, and a salary of $10,000 per month, all of which will be applied to your debt. Additionally, I will cover the remaining balance of your father's medical bills." Petra's hand froze in the act of taking the card. "How do you know about my father's medical bills?" "I know many things, Ms. Agui." His expression remained unreadable. "The question is, will you accept my offer, or will I be forced to pursue legal action? I should warn you, my lawyers are exceptionally thorough. They would discover every financial indiscretion, every shortcut, every desperate choice you've made to survive. Your credit would be destroyed. Your future employment prospects would vanish. You would spend the rest of your life running from a debt you could never escape." The threat was delivered in a calm, almost gentle tone, which made it infinitely more terrifying. Petra snatched the card from his hand. "Fine. I'll be there tomorrow. 8 o'clock sharp. Don't be late." He turned and walked back toward the damaged Bugatti, which one of his men was already photographing for documentation. As he opened the door, he paused and looked back at her. "And Ms. Agui?" "What?" "Where's something practical? You'll be working." The Bugatti pulled away, leaving Petra standing beside her destroyed Honda in the sweltering Atlanta heat, holding a card that read, "Kong Do-han, CEO, Kang Holdings," with an address in the most exclusive gated community in the entire state. What had she just agreed to? The Kong estate was not a house. It was a fortress disguised as architecture. Petra stood at the massive wrought iron gates, staring up at the sprawling mansion beyond. The property had to be at least 20 acres, surrounded by pristine landscaping that looked like it belonged in a magazine. The main house was a stunning blend of modern design and traditional Korean architecture, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows, with subtle curved roof lines and natural stone elements that spoke to something ancient and powerful. "State your business." The voice came from an intercom panel to her left. Petra jumped, nearly dropping the small duffel bag that contained everything she deemed necessary for whatever awaited her inside. "Petra Agui. I'm here to start my employment." There was a pause, then a soft buzz as the gates swung open. Petra walked up the winding driveway, her sneakers crunching on the immaculate gravel. With each step, she became more aware of the cameras tracking her progress, the subtle signs of security that seemed to be everywhere, motion sensors disguised as landscaping lights, reinforced doors that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. What exactly had she gotten herself into? The front door opened before she could knock, revealing a small Korean woman in her 60s, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. Despite her age, she moved with surprising agility, and her eyes sparkled with warmth. "You must be Petra," the woman said, her English accented but clear. "I am Mrs. Cho, the head housekeeper. Welcome to the Kong estate." "Thank you," Petra replied, some of her tension easing at the genuine kindness in the woman's voice. "I'll admit, I'm not entirely sure what I'm supposed to be doing here." Mrs. Cho smiled. "Come. I'll give you a tour and explain your duties. Mr. King has left specific instructions." The interior of the mansion was even more impressive than the exterior. High ceilings, hardwood floors that gleamed in the natural light streaming through the windows, and artwork that Petra suspected cost more than she would earn in several lifetimes. But there were personal touches too, photographs on a side table, a well-worn Korean book on a reading chair, fresh flowers in hand-painted vases. Someone actually lived here. Someone who, despite their obvious wealth, had created a home. "The estate has 42 rooms," Mrs. Cho explained as they walked. "You will not be responsible for all of them. We have a full cleaning staff for that. Your duties are more personal. You will serve as Mr. Kang's domestic assistant. You'll manage his personal schedule when he's at home, ensure his study and private quarters are maintained to his standards, oversee his meals, and handle any special requests he might have." "That sounds like being a personal maid," Petra said flatly. Mrs. Cho paused, turning to face her with an expression that was both sympathetic and assessing. "Mr. Kong told me about your situation, the accident, the debt. I know this isn't what you planned for your life. But I've worked for the Kang family for 30 years, and I can tell you this, Mr. Kang is not a cruel man. Demanding, yes. Exacting, certainly. But not cruel. With respect, Mrs. Cho, I just met the man. He threatened to destroy my entire life if I didn't agree to work for him. Did he? Or did he offer you a way out of an impossible situation with dignity intact?" Mrs. Cho tilted her head. "Your debt will be paid, your father's medical bills will be cleared, and you will have food, shelter, and a salary while you work off the balance. Many people in your position would have faced far worse consequences." Petra wanted to argue, but she couldn't deny the truth in Mrs. Cho's words. Her other options had been homelessness, legal prosecution, or a lifetime of crushing debt. This was humiliating, but it was survivable. "Where's my room?" she asked instead. "This way." Her quarters were on the 3rd floor of the East Wing, far nicer than she had expected. The room was decorated in soft neutrals with touches of sage green, featuring a comfortable-looking queen bed, a private bathroom with a deep soaking tub, and windows that overlooked a stunning garden. "Mr. Kang's private quarters are in the West Wing," Mrs. Cho informed her. "You'll report there at 7 each morning to receive your instructions for the day. Breakfast for the household staff is at 6 in the main kitchen. Dinner is at 7 unless Mr. Kang requires you for evening duties." "What kind of evening duties?" "Occasionally, Mr. Kang hosts important guests. You may be asked to help prepare and serve during those events." Mrs. Cho's expression grew serious. "A word of advice, Petra. This household operates with certain protocols. You will see and hear things that must never leave these walls. Mr. Kang's business associates are not always conventional businessmen. If you're smart, you'll keep your head down, do your job, and ask no questions." The implication was clear. Kang Do-han was involved in things that existed outside the boundaries of legitimate business. Mafia, Petra thought. The rumors are true. He's Mafia. I understand, she said quietly. Good. Mrs. Cho handed her a tablet. Your schedule and instructions are on this device. It's also linked to the household security system. You'll need it to access certain areas. Your uniform is in the closet. Mr. Kong expects you in his study at 8 o'clock sharp tomorrow morning. After Mrs. Cho left, Petra sat on the edge of her new bed and stared at the elegant room around her. 24 hours ago, she had been scrambling to prepare for a job interview that would have paid her just enough to survive. Now she was living in a mansion, employed by a man who might be one of the most powerful criminals in the Southeast. How did this become my life? 8 o'clock the next morning found Petra standing outside Kang Do-han's study, her heart pounding despite her best efforts to appear calm. She had been awake since 5, too anxious to sleep properly. She had showered, dressed in the simple black uniform Mrs. Cho had provided, tailored slacks and a crisp white blouse, and braided her long locks into a neat crown atop her head. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked professional, composed. She felt anything but. Enter. The command came through the closed door before she could knock. Petra took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The study was magnificent, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with volumes in both English and Korean, a massive mahogany desk that looked like it belonged in a museum, and windows that offered a panoramic view of the estate's gardens. But Petra's attention was immediately drawn to the man behind the desk. Kang Do-han was even more striking than she remembered. Today, he wore a simple black turtleneck that emphasized his broad shoulders and the clean lines of his jaw. His dark hair was slightly less styled than it had been yesterday, softening his features just enough to make him seem approachable. But his eyes were the same, dark, penetrating, seeing far more than they revealed. "Ms. Agui," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "Please sit." She sat, keeping her spine straight and her expression neutral. Whatever game he was playing, she refused to show weakness. "I trust your accommodations are satisfactory?" "They're fine." "Fine." He seemed amused by her terse response. "Mrs. Cho informs me that you were awake before the household staff this morning. Eager to begin. Eager to get this over with. Honesty. How refreshing." Kang Do-han leaned back in his chair, studying her with that unnerving intensity. "I appreciate directness, Ms. Agui. So allow me to be direct with you. You are now part of my household. That means you will be privy to sensitive information, conversations, documents, visitors. I need to know that I can trust your discretion. I'm not interested in your business. I'm here to work off a debt, not spy." "Good. But understand this. Betrayal in my world carries consequences. Not threats, I don't threaten. Simply facts. The people I work with have long memories and very little patience for loose lips." He paused. "I tell you this not to frighten you, but to ensure you understand the seriousness of your position." "I understand." "Do you?" Kang Do-han rose from his chair and walked around the desk, stopping just a few feet from where she sat. Up close, Petra could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. He wasn't as calm as he appeared. "I grew up in the hood, Mr. Kang," Petra said quietly. "I've seen things that would make your associates look like choir boys. I know how to keep my mouth shut and mind my own business. It's how I survived." Something shifted in his expression, respect, perhaps, or recognition. "Your father was Marcus Agui," he said. It wasn't a question. Petra stiffened. "How do you know my father's name?" "I know many things about you, Ms. Agui. I know he was a good man who made bad decisions trying to protect his family. I know he took on debts he couldn't repay to cover your mother's cancer treatments, and then his own when he got sick. I know he died 2 years ago, leaving you with nothing but bills and grief." "Stop." The word came out sharper than she intended. "You don't get to talk about my father like you knew him." "You're right. I didn't know him." Kang Do-han's voice softened slightly. "But I know what it's like to lose a father. To be left with an impossible legacy. Perhaps that's why I offered you this arrangement instead of simply destroying you in court." Before Petra could respond, there was a knock at the study door. "Enter," Kang Do-han called, stepping back to lean against his desk. The door opened to reveal a man who shared Kang Do-han's striking features, but with a warmer, more open expression. He was slightly shorter, with softer eyes and a quick smile that transformed his face from handsome to charming. "Brother," the man said in Korean before switching to English when he noticed Petra. And you must be our new household member. I'm Kong Songhyun, the infinitely more likable Kong brother. There's only two of us, Kong Do-han said dryly. The competition isn't fierce. And yet I still win. Kong Songhyun grinned and extended his hand to Petra. Please call me Hyun. Everyone does except my tragically formal older brother. Petra shook his hand, some of her tension easing despite herself. There was something disarming about Kong Songhyun, a warmth that his brother completely lacked. Petra agreed. I know. You're the woman who destroyed Do-han's favorite toy. Hyun's eyes sparkled with mischief. I've never seen him so affected. Usually, people who damage his things simply disappear. The fact that you're here, alive and employed, is practically a miracle. Hyun, Kong Do-han warned. What? I'm simply welcoming our new staff member. He turned back to Petra. If my brother becomes too unbearable, come find me. I'm much nicer, I promise. Shouldn't you be at the office? Kong Do-han asked pointedly. I'm going. Hyun headed for the door, pausing to look back at Petra with that charming smile. Really, though, if you need anything, I'm in the south wing. My door is always open. When he was gone, Kong Do-han sighed. My brother believes himself to be irresistible. Please don't encourage him. I wasn't encouraging anyone. Good. He moved back behind his desk, picking up a tablet and typing something before handing it to her. Your duties for today are outlined here. You'll start by organizing my personal library. Mrs. Cho will show you the system. This afternoon, you'll assist the chef in preparing for tonight's dinner. I have guests arriving at 7. What kind of guests? His eyes met hers. The kind you don't ask questions about. Remember what I said about discretion? Yes, sir. Something flickered across his face at the word, sir, something Petra couldn't identify. You're dismissed, Ms. Igui. Report back here at 6 to receive evening instructions. Petra stood, tucking the tablet under her arm. At the door, she paused. Mr. Kong? Yes. You said you know what it's like to lose a father. Is that why you brought me here instead of just ruining me? Some kind of twisted sympathy. For a long moment, he didn't respond. When he did, his voice was so quiet she almost didn't hear him. Perhaps. Or perhaps I simply recognized a survivor when I saw one. He turned back to his desk, dismissing her without another word. Okay, pause. Can we just talk about the tension in that study? The way Kong Do-han looks at Petra like he's trying to solve a puzzle? And what's the deal with him knowing so much about her family? There's definitely more to this story than a simple car accident. If you're hooked on this drama, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment telling me what you think Kong Do-han's real intentions are. Do you think he recognized Petra from somewhere? What's his connection to her past? Let me know your theories below. Now, back to the story. The guests arrived at exactly 7 o'clock. From her position in the corner of the formal dining room, Petra watched them enter with carefully concealed curiosity. There were 6 in total, 4 men and 2 women, all dressed in expensive clothing that they moved with the confidence of people who were used to wielding power. Mrs. Cho had briefed her on the basics. She was to assist with serving drinks and food, remain unobtrusive, and above all, hear nothing and remember nothing. You are furniture tonight, the older woman had said firmly. Beautiful, efficient furniture. Kong Do-han stood at the head of the room, greeting each guest with a handshake or bow. In his formal attire, a perfectly cut navy suit that emphasized his powerful build, he looked every inch the sophisticated businessman. But Petra noticed how his guests deferred to him, how their eyes flickered with something that looked like fear whenever he spoke. These were not equals meeting for dinner. This was a king holding court. The Kim Choi merger is proceeding ahead of schedule, one of the men was saying as Petra poured wine. He was older, silver-haired, with cold eyes that reminded her of a shark. Your connections in Seoul have been invaluable, Do-han. I'm glad to hear it, Mr. Park. Kong Do-han's voice was smooth, perfectly controlled. The Kang family has always valued our partnerships. Indeed. Mr. Park's eyes slid to Petra as she refilled his glass. New staff? A recent acquisition. Acquisition. The word made Petra's jaw tighten, but she kept her expression blank. She's lovely, one of the women commented. She was perhaps 40, beautiful in a preserved, artificial way, with diamonds dripping from her ears and neck. Where did you find her? She found me, Kang Do-han said, and there was something almost amused in his tone. Quite dramatically, actually. Oh. The woman's eyes lit with curiosity. Do tell. Another time, perhaps. Tonight is about business. The dinner proceeded with conversations that Petra only half followed, discussions of investments, properties, political connections, all conducted in carefully coded language that suggested far more than it revealed. She refilled glasses, removed plates, and remained invisible, exactly as Mrs. Cho had instructed. But she noticed things. The way one of the younger men kept glancing at the door, as if expecting trouble. The subtle hand signals Kang Do-han exchanged with his brother, who sat at the other end of the table. The barely concealed hostility between Mr. Park and another guest, a woman in red who smiled like a knife. These people were playing games with stakes Petra couldn't begin to understand. Near the end of the meal, as she was clearing the dessert plates, a hand closed around her wrist. Pretty girl, the voice slurred. Petra looked down to find one of the male guests, younger, drunk, with the entitled expression of someone who had never been denied anything in his life. You're not on the menu, are you? I'm staff, Petra said coldly, trying to pull her arm free. His grip tightened. Everything here belongs to Kang Do-han, doesn't it? Maybe I can convince him to share. Remove your hand. The voice cut through the room like ice. Kang Do-han was no longer seated. He stood behind the drunk man's chair, his expression absolutely terrifying in its blankness. I was just, the man stammered. You were just leaving. Kang Do-han's eyes never left the man's face. Now, two of the suited men who had been guarding the door materialized beside the guest, lifting him smoothly from his chair and escorting him out. The entire exchange took less than 30 seconds. The remaining guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. My apologies, Mr. Park said smoothly. Young Mr. Chin has not yet learned proper manners. Then perhaps you should teach him before bringing him into my home again. Kang Do-han's voice was still cold. My staff are under my protection. Anyone who forgets that will find themselves dealing with consequences they won't enjoy. The atmosphere in the room had shifted from cordial to tense. Petra stood frozen, her wrist still tingling from where the man had grabbed her, her heart pounding with a mixture of shock and something else she couldn't identify. Kang Do-han looked at her, and for just a moment, something warm flickered in those cold eyes. Ms. Agui, you're dismissed for the evening. She didn't argue. She fled. Later that night, Petra sat in her room, unable to sleep. She kept replaying the moment in her head, the drunk man's hand on her wrist, the genuine fear in his eyes when Kang Do-han spoke. The CEO of Kong Holdings had just threatened someone in front of a room full of powerful people. For her. Why? She was nothing to him. A debtor. A servant. A minor inconvenience that he could have crushed without a second thought. Instead, he had protected her. A soft knock at her door made her jump. Ms. Agui. Mrs. Cho's voice came through the wood. Mr. Kong wishes to see you in his study. Petra's stomach tightened. Now? It's nearly midnight. Now, the walk to the West Wing felt longer than it should have. The mansion was quiet at this hour, the only sounds the soft ticking of clocks and the distant hum of security systems. The study door was open when she arrived. Kang Do-han stood by the window, still in his suit but with the jacket removed and his sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. He was looking out at the moonlit gardens, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. You wanted to see me? Petra asked from the doorway. Come in. Close the door. She obeyed, her heart pounding. Are you hurt? He asked without turning around. No. He barely touched me. That's not what I asked. Now he turned, and his eyes dropped to her wrist. Even from across the room, she could see the faint bruises forming where the man's fingers had been. Come here. Petra hesitated, then crossed the room to stand before him. Kang Do-han set down his glass and took her hand gently, examining the marks with an intensity that made her breath catch. He should have known better, he said quietly. I'll ensure he never makes that mistake again. What are you going to do to him? Nothing you need to concern yourself with. His thumb traced lightly over the bruised skin, and Petra shivered despite herself. I brought you here tonight to apologize. You're apologizing? Don't sound so shocked. A ghost of a smile crossed his features. I do occasionally acknowledge when I failed. Tonight, I failed to protect someone under my roof. That won't happen again. I'm not under your roof because I want to be, Petra reminded him, though her voice lacked its usual sharpness. I'm here because you gave me no choice. There are always choices, Mizugui. You chose survival. There's no shame in that. You keep saying you know things about me. My father, my debts, my life. Petra pulled her hand from his grip. Why? I'm nobody to you. Just some random woman who crashed into your car. Kang Do-han was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. 8 years ago, I was dying. Petra blinked. What? A rival family had ambushed me. I had managed to escape, but I was badly injured, multiple stab wounds, internal bleeding. I collapsed at the gates of Oakland Cemetery and was certain I would die there. A chill ran down Petra's spine. Oakland Cemetery. That was where her grandmother was buried, where she had spent countless hours as a teenager, grieving and alone. A young woman found me, Kang Do-han continued, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her soul tremble. She was 17, maybe 18. Dark skin, long locks, eyes like fire. She wrapped her own clothing around my wounds and stayed with me until help arrived. She saved my life. Petra's heart stopped. I don't remember. I do. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. I remember everything about that night. The way you talked to me to keep me conscious. The way you held my hand. The promise you made that you wouldn't let me die. That was you. Petra's mind reeled, images from that long-ago night flooding back. The young man with blood on his designer clothes. The way he grabbed her hand and whispered something in a language she didn't understand. The ambulance lights reflecting off the tombstones. It took me 5 years to find you, Kang Do-han said. By the time I had rebuilt my family's empire and had the resources to search properly, you had moved 3 times, changed your phone number, and disappeared into a neighborhood where my people weren't welcome. So when I hit your car, fate. The word was spoken with absolute certainty. You belong to me, Petra. You have since the moment you chose to save a stranger's life instead of walking away. I've been waiting 8 years to repay that debt. Petra stared at him, her mind struggling to process what he was telling her. The most powerful man in Atlanta's underground empire believed he owed her a debt. All because of a random act of kindness when she was a grieving teenager. The car accident wasn't planned, she said slowly. You couldn't have known. No, that was genuine coincidence. But when I saw your name on the accident report, when I realized who you were. His eyes blazed with an emotion she couldn't name. I wasn't going to let you slip away again. So this whole arrangement, making me your maid, it was all a pretense? I needed a reason to keep you close. To protect you while He hesitated. While you what? While I figured out how to tell you the truth. Kang Do-han's voice dropped even lower. Petra, there are things about my world that you don't understand. Dangerous things. I have enemies who would use anyone connected to me as leverage. I brought you into my home because it was the safest place I could put you, where my security could protect you, where I could watch over you myself. Protect me from what? I'm not connected to your world. You are now. The moment you became part of my household, you became a target. I'm sorry for that. But I'm not sorry for keeping you close. His hand rose, hesitating just inches from her face before gently tucking a stray lock behind her ear. I've been looking for you for 8 years, Petra. Now that I've found you, I'm not letting you go. The weight of his words hung in the air between them. I need time to process this, Petra whispered. Take all the time you need. Kang Do-han stepped back, giving her space to breathe. But know this. Everything I have, my resources, my power, my protection, it's yours. Whatever you need. Whatever you want. You saved my life. I intend to spend the rest of mine earning that gift. Petra left the study in a daze, her mind spinning with revelations she could barely comprehend. The man she had dismissed as a cold, calculating criminal had been carrying a memory of her for nearly a decade. And somewhere beneath her shock and confusion, a small, treacherous part of her heart began to warm. The days that followed were strange. Petra continued her duties as Kang Do-han's domestic assistant, but the dynamic between them had shifted. He was still demanding, still exacting in his standards, but there was a gentleness beneath the surface now, small considerations that she hadn't noticed before. fresh flowers in her room every morning, always her favorites. A new laptop waiting on her desk so she could continue her online studies. A chef who seemed to know exactly what she liked to eat without her ever having to ask. Kang Do-han was courting her. Quietly, patiently, but unmistakably. And despite her best efforts to resist, Petra found herself responding. She started looking forward to their morning meetings in his study. She caught herself smiling when she heard his voice in the hallway. She lingered a little longer when she brought him his afternoon tea, finding excuses to stay and talk about books, or music, or the garden she'd started tending in her spare time. He was nothing like she'd expected. Beneath the cold exterior was a man of surprising depth, fluent in 5 languages, passionate about classical music, fiercely protective of his younger brother, and haunted by a past he rarely discussed. "My father was killed when I was 18, he told her one evening, as they sat in the library watching the sunset through the tall windows. A power struggle within the organization. I was too young, too naive to see it coming. He was betrayed by people he trusted. Is that why you're so guarded? It's why I learned to be." His eyes met hers. "Trust is the most valuable currency in my world, Petra. And the most dangerous. I've spent 20 years building walls to protect myself and the people I care about. But you brought me inside those walls." Yes. The word was simple, but his gaze was anything but. "You're the exception to every rule I've ever made for myself." I don't know whether to be grateful for that or terrified. Their first kiss happened without either of them planning it. It was 2 weeks after his confession, during a thunderstorm that had knocked out the estate's power. Petra had been lighting candles in the study when Kang Do-han found her, his face illuminated by the flickering flames. "You shouldn't be wandering in the dark," he said, but his voice was soft rather than scolding. "I know this house better than you think. I've been exploring when you're at work. Have you?" He moved closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body through the thin fabric of her blouse. "And what have you discovered?" "That you have a collection of dog-eared romance novels hidden behind the economics texts in the 3rd bookcase." His laugh was unexpected, genuine, and warm, and completely at odds with his intimidating reputation. "My mother's. I couldn't bring myself to get rid of them after she passed." "That's sweet. Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to maintain. Your secret is safe with me." The space between them had shrunk to inches. Petra could see the candlelight reflected in his dark eyes, could feel the tension building like static electricity before a lightning strike. "Petra." Her name was a prayer on his lips. "I need you to tell me to stop. Because if you don't, I'm going to kiss you, and I don't think I'll be able to let you go after that." She should have stopped him. She should have remembered all the reasons this was a terrible idea, the debt between them, the power imbalance, the dangerous world he inhabited. Instead, she reached up and traced her fingers along his jaw. "Then don't let me go." His mouth met hers in a kiss that stole her breath and ignited every nerve ending in her body. It was gentle at first, questioning, tentative, but when she responded in kind, something shifted. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer, and she melted into him like she'd been waiting for this moment her entire life. The storm raged outside, but inside the candlelit study, everything was warmth and fire and the feeling of finally coming home. But peace was not something that lasted in Kang Do-han's world. The trouble started a week later, with the arrival of a woman Petra had hoped never to see. Her name was Yoon Jae-hai, and she was everything Petra was not: polished, sophisticated, beautiful in a cold and perfect way. She was also, according to household whispers, Kang Do-han's former fiancé, a match arranged by their families before his father's death. "Do-han." Jae-hai's voice was honey-sweet as she swept into the foyer, ignoring Petra completely. "It's been too long." "Jae-hai." Kang Do-han's expression had reverted to the cold mask Petra remembered from their first meeting. "I wasn't expecting you. I was in the area. Thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing." Her eyes finally slid to Petra, taking in her uniform and position with barely concealed disdain. "And to meet your new pet." "She's not my pet." "No? Then what is she?" Jae-hai circled Petra like a shark scenting blood. "A charity case? A temporary distraction? Because we both know how this ends, Do-han. The families have expectations. Our engagement may have been postponed, but it was never canceled. Things have changed." "Have they?" Jae-hai's smile was cutting. You know as well as I do that you can't lead the organization without proper alliances. And an alliance with my family is worth more than 100 pretty maids. Petra's hands clenched at her sides, but she kept her expression neutral. She had dealt with women like Jai-hai her entire life, girls who thought their money and status made them superior, who looked at people like her as beneath notice. But this was different. This was about Kang Do-han and the threat to whatever was building between them. Ms. Yoon, Petra said calmly, I believe Mr. Kang has work to attend to. Perhaps you could schedule a proper appointment. Jai-hai's eyes flared with anger. Did your maid just dismiss me? She's not my maid. Kang Do-han stepped forward, placing himself between Petra and Jai-hai. And she's right. I have work. Whatever you came here to discuss can wait. Do-han. Goodbye, Jai-hai. The woman's face transformed from beautiful to ugly in an instant, her features twisted with rage and humiliation. You'll regret this, she hissed. Both of you will. She stormed out, and the front door slammed with enough force to rattle the windows. In the silence that followed, Kang Do-han turned to Petra with an expression she couldn't read. I'm sorry you had to witness that. Is what she said true? About the engagement. It was true. Years ago. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. Our families had an agreement, made when we were children. But after my father died, I refused to honor it. The political fallout was significant. And now she's back. She never really left. Jai-hai has been waiting for me to realize that I need her family's support to maintain my position. His jaw tightened. But I've spent 15 years building something that doesn't require marriage alliances to survive. I won't be forced into a union I don't want. Even if it costs you everything? Kang Do-han's eyes met hers, and the intensity there made her breath catch. Nothing is worth losing you. The next few days were tense. Jai-hai's visit had stirred something in the air, a sense of approaching danger that Petra couldn't shake. She noticed the increased security around the estate, the hushed conversations that stopped when she entered rooms, the way Kang Do-han's phone rang at all hours of the night. Something was happening in his world, something he was trying to protect her from. But she wasn't going to stay in the dark forever. I need you to tell me what's going on, she said on the third night, cornering him in his study after a particularly tense dinner. Don't lie to me, Do-han. I can see the stress you're under. He looked at her for a long moment, something like admiration mixed with worry in his expression. Jai-hai's family is making moves against me. They're calling in debts, pressuring my associates, threatening to expose certain business activities to the authorities. He paused. They want to force my hand. Either I agree to the marriage or they'll bring everything I've built crashing down. And if you agree, then I lose everything I actually care about. His eyes held hers. Including you. Petra's heart clenched. There has to be another way. There might be. But it's risky. Kang Do-han moved to his desk, pulling out a folder. I've been gathering information on the Yoon family for years. Evidence of their own illegal activities, things far worse than anything I've ever done. If I release it, their credibility is destroyed. They can't threaten me without threatening themselves. Then do it. It's not that simple. He met her eyes. The fallout could affect innocent people. Employees, families, people who had nothing to do with their crimes. I've spent years trying to minimize the collateral damage of this life. I don't want to become the monster they already think I am. Petra crossed the room and took his hands in hers. You're not a monster. You're a man trying to do the right thing in an impossible situation. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. Even if it means danger? Even if it means the life you knew is gone forever. My life was never what I thought it was. The moment I crashed into your car, everything changed. Maybe that's exactly what needed to happen. Kang Do-han pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. You saved my life once, Petra. Now you're saving my soul. The Kang family's annual charity gala was the biggest event of the year, a glittering affair that drew Atlanta's elite like moths to a flame. This year, it would also serve as the stage for Kang Do-han's final move against the Yoon family. You want me to go with you? Petra asked, staring at the stunning crimson gown that had appeared in her room that morning. As what exactly? As my partner. Kang Do-han's voice came from the doorway. It's time the world knew who you are to me. Do-han, I'm a maid. Less than a month ago, I was serving drinks at your dinner parties. You were never just a maid, Petra. You were the woman who would stand beside me when I made the most important announcement of my life. He crossed to her, taking her hands. Tonight, I'm going to reveal the truth about the Yoon family. And when I do, I want you there with me. Why? Because you make me brave. His voice was soft, vulnerable in a way she'd never heard before. You make me believe that there's something worth fighting for beyond power and politics. I need that tonight. I need you. Petra looked at the gown, then back at the man who had turned her entire life upside down. Fine, but I'm not wearing heels higher than 3 inches. If I'm going to face down Atlanta's elite, I need to be able to run. His laugh was warm and real. Deal. The gala was everything Petra had imagined and more. The King Holdings ballroom was transformed into a winter wonderland of white and silver, with crystal chandeliers casting rainbow light across hundreds of elegantly dressed guests. A live orchestra played in one corner, while waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Petra had never felt more out of place, or more powerful. The crimson gown fit her perfectly, hugging her curves before flowing into a dramatic train. Her locks were styled in an elaborate updo, threaded with tiny gold beads that caught the light when she moved. At her throat, she wore a simple gold pendant, a gift from Kang Do-han that contained a tiny photograph of them together. "You're stunning," he murmured as he led her through the crowd. "Every person in this room is wondering who you are." "Let them wonder. That's my girl." The whispers followed them everywhere. Who is she? Where did she come from? Is Kang Do-han really with a black woman? Petra heard them all and refused to let them dim her light. She belonged here. She had earned her place at Kang Do-han's side. And she was about to prove it. Yoon Jae-hai appeared halfway through the evening, resplendent in a white gown that made her look like an ice princess. Her parents flanked her, their expressions carefully neutral. "Do-han," Mr. Yoon said smoothly, extending his hand. "Lovely event, as always. I'm glad you could make it." Kang Do-han's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I believe you know my partner," Petra agreed. The emphasis on the word partner was unmistakable. Jae-hai's face went pale. "I don't believe we've been formally introduced," Mrs. Yoon said, her tone suggesting she wanted nothing to do with any introduction. "No, but you'll be seeing a lot more of me in the future." Petra's voice was calm and confident. "I'm not going anywhere." The standoff was interrupted by the orchestra falling silent, the signal that Kang Do-han had prepared to give his speech. He stepped onto the raised platform at the end of the ballroom, and every eye in the room turned to him. "Distinguished guests," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly across the space. "Thank you for joining me tonight. The Kang Foundation has raised over $50 million for education and youth programs in Atlanta, and that's thanks to your generosity." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. "But tonight, I have another announcement to make. One that concerns the future of both the Kang organization and my personal life." From the corner of her eye, Petra saw the Yoon family tense. "For years, there have been whispers about my family's business. Questions about our methods, our alliances, our choices." Kang Do-han's eyes swept the room. "Tonight, I'm putting those whispers to rest. The Kang organization is going legitimate." A murmur of shock rippled through the crowd. "Starting immediately, we are divesting from all questionable business activities and restructuring as a fully transparent corporation. This transition will be overseen by an independent ethics board and will be complete within 18 months. The Yoon family's faces were a study in fury. This wasn't what they had expected. By going legitimate, Kang Do-han was removing any leverage they might have had over him. "Additionally," he continued, "I have evidence of criminal activities conducted by certain families in our circle. Activities that make anything my family has ever done look like child's play." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "That evidence will be released to the authorities tomorrow morning, unless those families agree to follow our example and clean up their own operations." The implication was clear. The Yoon family was being given a choice: reform or be destroyed. Mr. Yoon's face was purple with rage. Jae-hai looked like she wanted to murder someone with her bare hands. But they were trapped, and everyone in the room knew it. "One last announcement," Kang Do-han said, his voice softening as he extended his hand toward Petra. "The woman standing beside me is Petra Gui. She is not my maid, not my employee, not my charity case. She is the love of my life. The crowd parted as Petra walked toward him, her head held high despite the whispers and stares. 8 years ago, she saved my life. She didn't know who I was, didn't expect anything in return. She simply saw a stranger in need and chose compassion over fear. Kang Do-han's eyes never left hers as she climbed onto the platform beside him. That act of kindness changed everything for me. It made me want to be a better man. And tonight, I'm finally ready to honor that debt properly. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Petra's heart stopped. Petra Gui, you crashed into my life, literally, and showed me that there's more to existence than power and survival. You make me laugh. You make me think. You make me want to be worthy of the way you look at me. He opened the box, revealing a stunning ring, a large ruby surrounded by diamonds, set in a band of rose gold. Will you marry me? The ballroom was absolutely silent. Petra looked at the man kneeling before her, the man who had started as her adversary, become her employer, and somewhere along the way, stolen her entire heart. Yes, she whispered. And then louder, so the entire room could hear, yes. 1 year later, the wedding was held at the Kang estate on a perfect October afternoon. Petra walked down the aisle in a custom gown of ivory and gold, her locks styled in an elaborate crown braided with white roses. Kang Do-han waited at the altar, his eyes never leaving his bride. His younger brother Hyun stood beside him as best man, grinning widely despite the tears in his own eyes. The guests were a mixture of both worlds, high society elites sitting beside Petra's childhood friends, powerful business associates beside her former restaurant coworkers. The Yoon family was notably absent. They had been quietly dismantled in the months following the gala, their criminal empire exposed, and their social standing destroyed. When Petra reached the altar, Kang Do-han took her hands in his. 8 years, he whispered, too soft for anyone else to hear. I waited 8 years for this moment. I would have waited longer, she whispered back. But I'm glad I don't have to. They exchanged vows written in both English and Korean, promising to protect each other, to support each other, to love each other through whatever challenges might come. When the officiant pronounced them married, the cheer that erupted could be heard across the entire estate. Later that night, as they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Kang Do-han pulled Petra close and whispered in her ear. You know what the first word I ever heard from you was? What? Stay. You told me to stay with you. To not give up. His arms tightened around her. I've been trying to do that ever since. Petra leaned back to look at his face, her husband's face, and smiled. And now? Now I never have to leave. He kissed her softly, reverently. I'm finally home. And that, my loves, is how Petra Agui went from crashing into a $9 million car to becoming the future wife of the most powerful man in Atlanta. But wait, this story isn't over yet. There's still the matter of the Yoon family's revenge, Kang Do-han's dangerous past, and the secrets that could threaten everything Petra and Do-han have built together. If you want me to continue this story with a part 2, make sure you smash that like button and leave a comment saying part 2. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. I read every single comment, so tell me, what was your favorite moment in this story? Did you see the connection between Petra and Do-han coming from the very beginning? And what do you think Jae-hae is going to do now that her plans have been completely destroyed? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget, love always finds a way.